Hello, this is a homily for the most holy solemnity of the Blessed Trinity. And it's the day when we celebrate the amazing God that we worship. And with that in mind, the Church chose the following readings. So we have, first of all, text from Exodus, and here it's the moment when God is passing in front of Moses up on Mount Sinai, and God announces that he is the Lord, a merciful and gracious God, slow to anger and rich in kindness and fidelity. Now, for the purposes of the Mass, they dropped out verse 7, which also says that he expects justice. But that is put aside for the moment, and we have this wonderful proclamation of who God is from God. He knows who he is, and he shares then this then with Moses, so much so that Moses bows down to the ground in worship, the attitude of a human being before Almighty God. Sometimes we take God for granted. We treat him like we would treat a neighbor over our back fence, and he is nothing like our neighbor over the back fence. This is a sovereign and enormous power that we can't even imagine. And Moses says, come along with us in our company. And this really is the key to the feast, because we're not dealing with God so much as he is in himself, but we're dealing with the fact that he comes along with us. Even though, and Moses says this, we are a stiff-necked people. And here is where sin gets mentioned. Yet pardon our wickedness and sins, because of course those interfere with us knowing who God is, us being close to God. And so Moses was very much aware of that and put that into his petition. Then the last line, receive us as your own. In other words, we would be somehow united with God. Now, what exactly that means only gets developed in the New Testament, but already it is some kind of closeness to God, some kind of possession where God possesses us and holds us close to him. The responsorial psalm is a celebration of the sovereign power of God. Blessed are you, O Lord, exalted above all forever. The psalmist also says he's praiseworthy. And that is not in the sense that every so often he does something where he needs to be patted on the back. Praiseworthy here means that God is, by his very existence, requiring of us to relate to him by praise. So we are aware then of really and truly who God is, and not us constructing in our heads some cheap picture of who we would like God to be. Blessed are you in the temple of your holy glory. That's not really a reference to an earthly temple, but a way of kind of symbolizing the residence of God in his own glory, because he is the fullness of all glory. And then the mentions of the throne. Blessed are you on the throne of your kingdom. Then you look down from your throne upon the cherubim, praiseworthy and exalted above all forever. So what we're having here is a celebration of the sovereign, superior power of God. And because we don't like acknowledging superiors and don't like acknowledging projects and powers beyond us, we will fight this. But in fact, the psalmist has got it right, which is why the Psalms keep on being used after 2,500 years. Next you have the second reading, which comes from 2 Corinthians. And here you have Paul writing to the little community in Corinth, and he starts out, rejoice. There's something worth celebrating. And, this is a very precarious world, the Roman world of the first century, and yet they are expected to rejoice because they are in God's company. Mend your ways, encourage one another, agree with one another, live in peace. So what you have is a recognition by Paul that if you want to be in this fellowship of God, which of course we're also celebrating the fact that God is already a fellowship in some sense, Father, Son, and Spirit. Here, if you want to be in this fellowship, you have to mend your ways. So we have a responsibility. We are not totally passive in this. Then the God of love and peace will be with you. If we're doing our part, God does his part. Now, he does much more than his part because he's trying to develop us, make us holy, bring us into union with him. He's using every possible way of doing this. But we have an active part to play. This is not a passive religion. Lastly, then, in the Gospel, which is John chapter 3, we have John saying, God so loved the world that he gave his only Son. God, in this sense, more Father, giving his Son, but the thing that we've been emphasizing all along, it's not really God in himself, but God in relation to us. And so the basic point here is God, first of all, loves the world beyond anything we could imagine. And then he does not wish to condemn the world, so he sends his Son. Not to condemn us, but in fact, that the world might be saved through him. That in fact, by this extra labor that God is going through, sending his Son into the world, we might be saved. And the kicker, which is the last two lines, we have to believe in him. We've got to be open to God as he is, not me cutting God down the way many primitive cultures did, cutting God down to being a lump of stone or a metal statue or whatever. This is the living, all-powerful God, and we literally have to believe in him as he is, as he's told us he is, rather than constructing a God that is more manageable in our heads and then assuming, oh, well, I've got it right. Have a beautiful day and stay safe.